Good morning and good afternoon. I'd like to thank the organizers for the invitation to be with you today. I'd like to thank my fellow panelists for your presentations, and I'd like to thank all who have logged on to be a part of this effort. Um, I've tried taping this presentation twice and went woefully over time both times. So I've recognized that the content here is about an hour's worth of content. The best I did was to get it down to 30 minutes. So what I'm going to do is basically provide you just a cursory overview or introduction of the content. I will go through the slides so you can see them. I won't be able to comment on them or expound on them due to time limits. But the reason why I want you to see them is in case you have an interest in the content, you can then contact the organizers or me, and I can send this to you. But for now and for today, this is going to be just a very superficial introduction to some basic thoughts that I put together on the issue of religious liberty. I describe, or I've entitled my presentation, Three Regimes, Religious Suppression, Three Regimes, and I'll explain what each of these are. Religious suppression is the opposite, of course, of religious freedom. And so basically, religious freedom is, um, it has to be built into systems because people who seek power and control. Religion is a big problem for people who become addicted to power and ultimately want ever greater control. They will move towards totalitarian systems, and religions are maybe the main big thing in the way. The three regimes are anti-religious states, religious monolith states, and what I dubbed fake open democratic states. These are the three regimes of religious suppression, or three regimes which are willing to outright deny religious believers and religions proper rights in their society. Anti-religious states are states built on ideologies that understand religions to be false by nature, archaic superstitions, bad for people, and they want to build their societies. They want to build their societies on reason or science or other kind of misleading, misguided systems. They usually begin oriented toward equality and end up the most grotesquely unequal states, period. It always turns out that way. Nevertheless, they're hostile to religion. They have no interest or desire whatsoever to support religious liberty. They're open about it. They think religion is bad. It shouldn't, there not only shouldn't be religious liberty, there shouldn't be any religion at all. They prohibit it, they criminalize it, they spy on their citizens in case any are thinking of doing religious things. And those are those kind of states. You won't find religious liberty uh, practiced there. They are happily and overtly and proudly, they don't want religion around, period. At least they're honest. The other type of anti-religious freedom regimes are those that are a monolithic religious state. It's quite the opposite. It has the identical same uh, outcome as an atheistic, Marxistic, materialistic regime like the CCP. That religion is outright suppressed, although they have little charades of state-approved religions so that they can present themselves to the international community as modern and free and so forth. But it's not the case. The opposite are religious monolithic states. These again have no religious liberty, and they don't intend to. They're not apologetic about it. There's one true religion. In this case, it's a certain interpretation of the Quran, which results in what's called political Islam, and those generate regimes, state regimes with economies and societies and militaries and so forth. And for those minority religions or not religions not of the regime are forbidden or obstructed or in essence forbidden, although again they might have certain kinds of claims that they're religiously plural in some fashion or another. In this particular case, the religious authority and the political authority are one and the same individual, so orthodoxy is the issue, not the violation of being so foolish as to be religious at all, but to be not orthodox, to be not comporting with the one true faith. And so those are monolithic religious states. Their mechanisms are um, and for identifying a single orthodoxy and enforcing it by legal and political means. The third regime I've described as fake open states. These are states which publicly call themselves pluralistic. They call themselves states that welcome all religious practice, but in fact, they function as they're functional monopolies in practice. Um, they systematically move toward the exact same degree of totalitarian control and the disestablishment and the persecution and imprisonment of religions, but they start with smaller religions, newer religions, unpopular religions. They do not use state force, as in the a case of the materialistic totalitarian states. They do not use the force of religious orthodoxy, as you find in the religious monolith states, but rather they use the cultural stigmatization of unpopular religions. And they rely on various institutions which are meant to keep corrupt and power-thirsty politicians in check, actually end up joining forces, and media becomes a kind of a Pravda-like force, advancing the agenda of a given partisan political angle. And religions are always a problem to anyone seeking control and power. These three regimes have these things in common. There is an authority higher than one's own personal conscience. Religion is understood to be a problem to be managed, not understood to be a positive contributor to the health of society. The way that the increasing totalitarian removal of rights of religious believers happens is first restrictions are normalized, and then eventually they're enforced by political and police force. That minority and unpopular religions are always targeted first, but surely, if the regime is allowed, can last long enough, all religions will become victim of the uh, the need for power seekers not to have people uh, following their conscience and gathering in religious groups. Here's the central warning of the presentation I'd like for us to consider. Religious liberty fails not only when religion is banned, but when it is managed, favored, and narratively controlled. Once a religion is banned, it's already game over. It's very hard to dig your way back from that. There has to be a radical upheaval and just kind of a society has to fall once it's reached a point where it bans religious practice. But when you watch a society begin to favor certain religions and begin to manipulate the narrative definition and to make religion's unpopular by a flood of articles and TV and news, and that's when you see the beginning of movement towards totalitarianism. That's in the third regime. The first two are openly clear. They don't allow minority religions, or they might do so in a charade. The counterpoint to everything I've described here, the three regimes, uh, political monolith, religious monolith, and societies which claim to have religious pluralism but are really just incrementally working toward the uh, the the deprivileging of religion because it's in the way of total control. But the fake democracies, um, they are there's only one political system that's ever been invented in the history of humankind that has the possibility to sustain religious freedom and keep it preserved even in the face of corrupt, power-hungry uh, seekers, either religious power-hungry people or political power-hungry people. The United States established in its foundational framework guarantees that religion could survive the bad behavior of leadership. One is that religion is a right. It's not a privilege given by the state. The most important, perhaps, of all, is that the human conscience is the highest authority, period, on earth, period. It's higher than any political power. It's higher than any cultural assessment. So if you drop to the bottom no, I'll leave it at there. It's the conscience is the highest. The state is structurally constrained. It's not merely rhetorical. It's not claiming to be pluralistic. The state is blocked from blocking from uh, having exerting authority over religious belief and practice. It because the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, the Declaration of Independence established that the First Amendment freedoms are given by God. They're not to be infringed, and they're not given by the state. So the state is by definition structurally constrained. There is no other system that has this built into its basis. And so even modern democracies, even the UN claims to insist on the advocacy of religious freedom, which it probably does. It just doesn't have the basis whereby that right is given by God, it can't be infringed, and that human conscience is superior to every other authority on earth. In this way, religious institutions remain independent civil society actors. All other systems do not have this one essential guarantee that preserves a religious freedom. And this is why you'll find society, very modern, very seemingly democratic society, slip into willy-nilly the capacity to exert totalitarian control over an unpopular religion and look exactly like China or Iran, just disestablish a religion by the state. That can't happen under the American system, which understands in which religious freedom arises out of the affirmation that the conscience is protected. It's our rights are given by God. Our conscience is superior to all other authority on earth. The other democratic systems do not have this at base, and as a result, little by little, freedom can be limited by, especially this second one, freedom is conditional on public order and national harmony. You'll even see that in the West. You'll even see people constantly yelling about a threat to democracy, a threat to democracy. I could regard tall people a threat to democracy, or blue-eyed people a threat to democracy. So as soon as you have public order or this idea of national harmony as a higher authority in which a power-seeking individual, whether religious or political, can start to abuse that concept and start to constrain upon the rights of belief and conscience and right to gather, right to speak, using these things, public order, national harmony, then you just have the incremental encroachment of totalitarianism, because there's a certain type of people who can't govern with honor. They have to govern by control. Public morality is easily manipulable. Suddenly there'll be an outcry. Oh, this particular group is threatening our society. We have to get rid of it. We have to get rid of it. Under the American system, you cannot do so. It's a right given by God. So I've used a Korean example in this slide. I'm not going to develop it because I've tried twice to cover some of the material and I just don't manage by time. Uh, this slide is basically a reiteration of what I've just explained. In the American side, the constitutional tradition limits power structurally, not just rhetorically. Other types of democracy, including the UN affirmation and all other modern nations, they claim to be pluralistic, but they do not have the structural guardrails in place. This slide and table develops all of these step by step, and you can study it if it has enough interest to you to request these slides. I'm happy to share them. The conclusion of my talk is to point out this: the fixing of any of these three regimes which oppress an individual's calling from God to worship in a certain way and in a certain community. There are no quick fixes to this. If these are not embedded in the founding constitutional structures of the founding of the country, it is very hard to undo what's in place, because you would actually need the compliance of either political or religious people to completely redefine the rights so that all human beings, all citizens are there. It is called the consent of the governed. Everybody rules in American by the consent of Americans. It's and so to imagine trying to get anybody to vote on that, all legislators and politically elected figures to vote on something that's going to limit their power. It's very, very hard to do. But these four elements are what would be needed in order to restore or improve or expand the incidence of religious liberty in human affairs and internationally. You have to constitutionally enshrine structural limits on state power. You have to call out or put in check this kind of disgusting media compliance and becoming a state-utilized mechanism of suppression. Religions should, by all means, never seek the shortcut of having the state do its dirty work and wipe out some competitor because they're unpopular. This is a complete violation of the purpose of religion in the world, which is to function as a set of ideals, virtues, and conscience for those who would serve as public servants. Finally, a culture that understands and knows essentially that rights are inalienable. They're not contingent upon state permission. So no matter who I hate, I don't care. I could hate short people. I could hate fat people. I could hate unification. No matter who I hate, as an American, I know from I'm imbued at my culture says that each individual has God-given rights. It's not up to whether I myself like them or not. It's not up to whether the New York Post or the Washington Post or the New York Times likes them or not, or whether a given politician likes them or not. Our culture knows that our rights to gather, to speak, our conscience, to worship, to practice our religion, to assemble, they're given by God and they can't be infringed. All right, so those are a few thoughts, and I think possibly on this third try, I may have hit closer to the time limit. Thank you very much.
Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to 12 Gates Foundation.